Welcome, everybody. Today we have a very special guest, Ben Pike. He's the licensee and director of Pulse Property. Now, for anybody that lives in the Sutherland Shire, in the south of Sydney, I'm sure you've seen his face before. He's absolutely everywhere and immaculately presented. Ben Pike is one of the top real estate agents in Australia as ranked by REA. And I feel very blessed for you to have you coming on the show today. So thanks, Ben.
Good to see you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm actually looking forward to chatting with you.
Likewise. We've been doing work together for a little while now. We first met when I was working over at Third Eye. You were dominating the Sutherland Shire back then and still are today. But I really feel like you have gone from strength to strength, and it's not a easy market for you to work in because there is a really strong competitor. So well done for everything you've achieved today.
I appreciate that. Hard work and consistency pays off. No shortcuts.
Yeah, we're just talking about that, actually. Mate, I want to kick off by just talking generally about what you're seeing in your patch, a bit of a market update. I mean, generally, we've seen there's a bit of an uptick in the real estate market, and I just want to see from your perspective, what are you feeling on the ground?
I definitely agree with that. I would say more than an uptick. If you look at just the last 5 auctions, which have been just in the last week, we've got examples of properties from $100,000 above reserve to over $700,000 above reserve. The market is definitely shifting, and whether that's because there isn't much on the market, people feel like the market maybe has hit its bottom and it's on its way up, they're trying to capitalize. I'm not too sure, but I would say more than an uptick.
More than an uptick sounds right. 100,000 above reserve and 700K above reserve.
That was the lowest. Yeah. And some of those auctions, like the lowest one had 8 registered, the busiest had 16 registered. And this is just in the last week. But what we're seeing is more email inquiry, more phone inquiry, more buy-side inspections, but more genuine buyers, those that have finance, that are making offers, being competitive and buying property. It's a big shift compared to where we were late last year.
So talking to you about that, it feels like it's certainly debt has got more expensive, but there are still a lot of buyers out there that have the money and have maybe normalized this new cost of buying a home.
I agree with that. Everyone we're talking to now is factoring in paying back at around 6%, which we're not too far away. It'll be interesting this afternoon what happens with rates. Do you think they'll go up or do you think they'll remain the same?
You know, a wise man said to me, 80% chance that it won't go up, they'll stay stable. But even if that 20% does happen and it does go up, they've always got it built into the kit bag to just drop it later. So they'll just back end it and cut the rates after. So it's kind of irrelevant at this point. I think another 0.25 or whatever it is, maybe something small. It feels like the end is in sight, and that's the biggest part. When we're on the roller coaster going up, we weren't sure how high that hill was, but now we're starting to see the end. And I'm noticing from our perspective, investors are certainly coming back into the market. So yeah, it's kind of irrelevant at this point.
The market to me is very similar to when COVID first happened. That initial period where there was a skepticism, people were nervous, unsure what was going to happen. You couldn't pay someone to look at a property. 12 months after that, the market went through the roof because everything normalized. I do think later this year, Q2, 3 and 4, so the calendar year, or Q1 and 2 financial year, will be a lot bigger than what people are anticipating.
That's interesting that you say that, because my next question was, are we in a buyer's or a seller's market? And then how do we anticipate the market moving over the course of this year?
The media is now talking about, Sydney went up 1.4%, last month. To me, they're always a little bit behind with some of the data because they're using standard sales. I think that number will increase. And in my point of view, anyhow, is that once the media picks up on this narrative that the market is moving and moving quicker than what they anticipate, buyers will then get nervous. They'll come back to the market in droves. You'll see competition and prices will continue to go up.
So for now, do you still think it's a buyer's or a seller's market? Who holds the balance of power?
Listing to listing, it does vary. I think it's pretty even, but it is definitely trending to vendors right now. Like I said, when was the last time you saw 16 registered buyers at an auction in Sydney? If you're looking at 18 months ago.
Yeah, you absolutely
We had 5 in the last 7 days. It's definitely picking up.
And is it certain parts of the market that you're seeing? Like, where do you see the most buying activity for you? Where is the most sort of?
It's across the board. So the one in Sutherland, that was 170 above reserve. That's at a $1.25 million price range. A 3-bedroom villa, all the way up to a home in Burraneer we sold on Saturday. 1A Travalsa Place with a reserve of 3.1. It sold to 3,801.
Wow.
So 701,000 above reserve at a higher price range for this market shows you the strength. And then everything in between.
So when you're looking at these kinds of properties that are, whether it's a lower end, middle or top end, and you've gone through a lot of property, what is it about these properties that you go in that you feel separate them from the pack? So, you know, when you go and do a listing, you start first scoping the property. Are there things that catch your attention and you think, fuck, this is going to grab the market, or buyers are really going to love this, or something that sets it apart? And what are those features that you see that really grab your attention that, you know, if you're a purchaser, you're keeping an eye on for that because that makes that piece of real estate scarce or unique or makes it a piece of gold compared to everything else?
Houses are still outperforming everything else in the market by a long way. If you look at the homes that present really well, good floor plans, good level yards with a good aspect, they are the top tier. People will pay for quality and people don't want to do work. So you give me a home on a good block in a good location that's renovated and ready to move into, people will fight over it.
So you feel the opportunity then in the market is for people to find good blocks that are unrenovated, have the right aspect that you can make a shift or that you can do some amendments to. I saw an interesting article. I don't know if you saw it. I think it was in Schofields or something like that, where basically the property had passed in and the agent came back and told the owner to reposition the property, move some internal walls. And I think it was 6 months later, they sold it for $400,000 above what they had originally priced it at. And it was just a matter of just moving a couple of walls around, allowing for some more natural light. So you think that those little shifts in a plan or a house have a significant impact?
Definitely. And we've seen it. We've sold a couple of properties this year that were purchased late last year. They've been renovated and sold for substantially more, without question. And what most people believe to be a tougher market with higher rates, they are still outperforming everything else in the market.
That's really good feedback. And where's the opportunity for the lower end first home buyers? So I'm new to the market. You know, the average first home buyer is about 35. What would you be buying for your first property?
What price range are we shopping in?
Let's say it's about $1 million, 1 to 1.5.
Okay, so if I had $1 million, I would try and get into, I would say Guyamere or Caringbah, being the two suburbs. I'd be buying a 2 or 3 bedroom villa or townhouse. I'd be looking at something built in the late 70s, red brick complex, double brick and a good size. I'd be picking something that's single level without stairs and completely original. I'll be renovating it, holding it, and selling it to a downsizer for substantially more, because we know that market are coming from bigger homes with no debt and they won't want to do work.
You've just said a lot of really interesting things. You started with what you'd be doing, but it was always with the end in mind. And I really want to note that. You knew exactly who the person was going to be that was going to be buying it. You said it was going to be a downsizer. So specifically, you wanted to be 1 story, no stairs. You wanted an original condition so you can add a maximum amount of value. And you know that that downsize is coming from a bigger home. They want something that's a little bit smaller and they've got the cash to spend on a completely done property. Is that how you were thinking about it all?
It is, definitely. And we know they're looking at the long-term play, the home they want to be in for the next 10, 15, 20 years. The single level is important, but they're not trying to buy a home below market value. They're not looking for value. They're looking for convenience. They're looking for a home they can live in and something that's easy. And they didn't pay a premium for that.
Really good advice. So I'm going to ask you a pointed question. Amongst my friends, we have a saying, it's called, an LFYP. And it's a lesson for young players. And if players just people that are trying to do something in their life. And it's normally comes off the back of an embarrassing story or a mistake that they've made in their life.
Okay.
getting a shitty tattoo in Bangkok or something, that's an LFYP, right?
I haven't done that. No tattoos, so that's an easy one.
I want to ask you, have you got any stories of a mistake that you personally made investing, or, upon your mistakes that you've made that you've learned from it, and you'd label that my LFYP? And
I made plenty of mistakes. Probably all the mistakes. It's the only way you learn. If it's e-business, I would say being too aggressive buying rent rolls without checking the quality of the rent roll, a little bit too bullish, would be business. Personal investors. In the early days, I was looking for value. So I would try and buy a property that was cheap without the understanding that it's cheap for a reason. So I think there's still value in buying something that's attractive, but buying something that people want is something they're always going to want. So not just buying something because it's cheap. So value and cheap are two different things. Yeah. Does that make sense?
it makes perfect sense. Can we elaborate on that? Because I think it's a really good point. Give me an instance where you looked at something, you bought it, or you're scoping something that was cheap, and what made it cheap or discounty that you think now wouldn't have
In
done.
the early days, being strategic and being in the industry, I was looking at properties on the market for a long period of time, depending on the year, call it 90 days or above, understanding that it has failed, for a better word, in the marketplace. The price had come down and I can come in and, lowball it and pick it up. So in the first couple of years, they were the investments that I was chasing. And in my mind, I thought I was buying great property under market value. And I probably was, to be fair, but they didn't get the same capital growth, the same quality tenant as the homes that I bought in the marketplace that were more competitive. So the better investment for me long term has been the ones that have gone to auction, I've competed for, paid somewhat of a premium for, to be fair, but they've experienced better capital growth. I've had better tenants, and it's been a far better investment than trying to pick up the ones that have failed and been on the market for a little while and bought cheap.
I like that piece. So going in and buying something, but paying a little overs. I mean, people are scared to go and pay a premium for a property, but you're telling us, pay your premium is your life lesson. You'd always go for the one that's better and that is competitive, because there's always going to be a market for it.
There's a reason why it's competitive, but there's a reason why there's a premium, because multiple people want to buy. And what is going to be popular now will be popular in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And what's popular now in the sales market will be popular in the tenant market. They're buying something that's cheap that no one wants to buy. The tenants want to live in there.
And what are those features that you've noticed on the downside that you'd avoid, but then on the upside that are just non-negotiables for you?
Again, it depends on the price range you're looking to invest into, but keep it simple and say we're looking at apartments. I personally haven't gone into new builds. I've gone for older blocks, and that's because I'm buying into smaller blocks that are red brick. Couple of reasons. One, the strata has already been set up. They've had their teething issues. Typically, they're in smaller blocks with lower levies, but the big one for me where I ideally try and invest is that the long-term play in that block will eventually get purchased by a developer. So I'm looking at a long-term premium. If it's in the housing market, for me, it's just position. So I will overcome things like floor plan, renovations, as long as it's in a great street and a good aspect. Everything else to me is just a bonus. The old saying, I'd pick the worst house in the best street every day of the week, then buy the best home in the worst location.
Absolutely. So it really is, everything's becoming clear. It is a long-term play. You're buying strategic assets in excellent locations with multiple exit strategies, realistically.
Correct. Everything that I'm buying now, in my mind, I'm not going to sell until I retire. So I'm not trying to buy something and hold it for 12 months or 2 months or, 5 years. I'm not trying to pick the market. I'm being strategic for the long play.
It's good advice. So last question. I know that you're a busy guy. And this one here it's off the back of my book that I've written. It's, what advice would you give new homeowners or investors so they don't fuck up their next purchase? What's the one thing that they should take away from this podcast today?
I think making a decision is probably the biggest one. And it sounds really simple, but you can get into your own head. And we see first home buyers come in, they want to know a square meter rate. They want to look at 30 recent sales. They're looking for a reason not to buy it. for me, again, it's something and it's going to be competitive, I would buy it and have the understanding you're buying something for a long period of time. It's not for 6 months, it's not for 12 months.
That's really good advice again, because I remember helping my my girlfriend at the time, my now fiance, to buy her first property, and she's an analyst at heart, and we went through absolutely everything, which was torment for months and months and months. And it wasn't until we actually bought something she realized you just got to pull the trigger. You'll never have all the information, and you've just got to jump into the market, pick something that is a long-term play, and stick to your guns.
And you know better than anybody, you've bought and helped people buy properties for numerous years. Has anyone ever bought a property 10 years or longer that's been a horrible decision today?
No.
Ever?
No. There have been some properties where you've had issues up front, and there are issues when you have the property over the life of it, which is normal. There's going to be problems. If you're buying an old building, whatever, you're going to have some leaking or a burst pipe.
You buy a television, there's going to be an issue. You get a car, you're going to get a flat tire. There will be issues. But I would say make a decision. I do believe the market has already bottomed out at the end of last year. I strongly believe the market is now increasing. And I think first home buyers will find it really hard if they wait for everyone to talk about it, because it may increase as much as 10% 6 to 12 months.
You heard it here first. I like the claim, and I actually believe exactly what you've just said. People are sitting and always waiting to see the bottom, but it's only until it's past us that we realize that the bottom was just...
Yeah. They're waiting for Channel 7 to have a headline that says property prices increasing. Everyone will flood back in and fight over it.
Especially if interest aren't coming back.
Yeah, like if you're in any other industry, right? If cars are on sale, people go and buy a car. If Apple has a sale on iPhones, you go and buy an iPhone. When real estate is on sale, no one touches it.
Everyone wants to sit and wait.
Everyone wants to pay. That's right.
Ben, thank you very much for your time today. We've unpacked quite a lot. I can see why you're one of the top agents in Australia. Thanks for the feedback and also your predictions. I think that your predictions are going to come off right. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw 5, 10 or 15% growth over the next, 12 to 18 months. And you've given some really good advice for brand new investors and homeowners. Appreciate your time. It's good catching up.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me. It is good to see you. Hopefully next time, in person.
Yeah. I'll catch you next time I'm in town.
Good to see you.
Happy investing, everybody. I'll catch you later.